So let me just say we have one more respondent. Then we'll take a short break and have a panel discussion, and discussion for all of you. So panelists be thinking about what Hava said to you and what you want to bring back to her. And meanwhile, our fourth panelist is Professor Ted Peters, our best friend here, Professor Emeritus of Systematic Theology at PLPU and GTU, of course, founding co-editor of the journal Theology and Science. Ran our 4-year mega program, Science and Science and Literature course program, funded from JPS. Has been a colleague with me for umpteen years, teaching courses together, publishing together, and of course he is our multi-month publisher. Always got something coming out. It's always great to hear. Ted, please.
Respondent is supposed to do at a scholarly symposium is accurately summarize what the speaker said and then carefully delineate criticisms. And Arvin did that marvelously, so I don't feel like I need to. So I just gave Hava my paper. I think I would like to talk about some of the issues that have been raised seriatim here, and you'll tell me when I've got 5 minutes to go. Thank you very much. I am disposed to like transhumanists, and the reason has to do with the way I grew up. I grew up in a family where my father was an automotive engineer. He was always thinking about things 4 years into the future before they would be produced. He had 22 patents when he retired. And he's the American designer of the rototiller. So I can remember as a little kid going out on the farms where he would demonstrate the rototiller to the farmers. And before 1945, rototillers didn't exist. Now they do. And I use them in my own backyard. So the idea of change, advance, is just part of my psyche. The idea that somehow or other we would want to go backward in time. Let me just say that doesn't make sense to me at this kind of basic level. Or that nature that we have inherited is good and ought not to be changed. That makes no sense to me. So I've kind of grown up with a technological mindset, even though I myself am not technological. Let me just say I swim in those waters. And one of the things I like about transhumanism is the transhumanists have a vision of a future, and we're going to change things to fulfill that vision. I think that's the hinge on which all ethics turns, right? We have a vision of a better world, and now we want to take the action to turn our world or to actualize our world in light of that vision. That's true even virtue ethics. You can list the 7 virtues. All right, I'm going to work on virtue number 1 tomorrow, and virtue number 2. So even self-transformation has an element of the future built into it. And let me just say I'm attracted to that in the mindset. I want to say thank God for the transhumanists on our planet. I'm glad there aren't too many of them, but I'm glad for the ones that we have. And there is something about the mindset, and I'm very sympathetic to Hava's approach, but let me illustrate the mindset in 2 ways. First, I did have a conversation about perfection with my father one time. And here is what he said is perfection. He said, it'll be perfect when I close a car door and the fit is so perfect you can't see the crack between the door and the panel. And he went to his grave never seeing that perfection, and I'll go to my grave never seeing that perfection as well. But that's my father didn't study history or the humanities or the life of the spirit. I mean, so that's the way he formulated perfect fit. Back in the early transhumanist days, before the word was used very much, I was invited to go to Stanford to make a presentation on the ethics of nanotechnology. Why? Well, because I've done some stuff on enhancement. Can we use nanotechnology combined with genetics for enhancement? So I gave my paper, but what was best was the coffee breaks. Because there, the nascent transhumanists were talking, and on one of them, Nick Bostrom was there, and he was going off on deep brain implants, okay? Deep brain implants. And he'd spelled this out, that in this deep brain implant would have the Encyclopedia Britannica. After all, he's from England, right? So you and I then would be able to access all of the knowledge in the Encyclopedia Britannica immediately, because it would be there. And then as we went on, this is really how the way the conversation went, of course it needs updating. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, you have it connected to a satellite. And every time new knowledge comes along, the satellite updates so it really looks good. So I mumbled something about ethics. And he said, well, here's the problem. You see, if a tyrant gets a hold of the satellite, the tyrant could put disinformation into your deep brain implant. And I said, I really like the logic of that. What I wanted to say is what would be worse than disinformation, of course, would be advertising. You can never get away from advertising. Well, the assumption that Bostrom made then, and I think to some extent he still does, and you see it in Kurzweil and the others, is that somehow or other memory augmentation leads to increased intelligence. I want to say I doubt that assumption. It seems to me that intelligence is so very different than quantities of information access. And even when Watson won this television quiz contest, I still don't think Watson is intelligent. This may be debatable, and despite the fact that IBM calls it an intelligent machine, and actually I'd like to hear Stan respond to me on this. I don't think it's intelligent because one of the chief characteristics of your and my intelligence is that we can handle counterfactuals. We can have a conversation in which we tell 3 lies, and we all know what the truth is. I don't know if Watson could handle that. And then that relates a little bit to the relationship between reality and unreality that Hava is concerned about. If I'm a transhumanist, I'm going to imagine a future that's radically different from the present. I'm going to imagine that intelligence is like software and the body is like hardware, and once I've uploaded my intelligence from my body into a computer, then my mind can live in cyberspace. We can just, our minds are like rocket ships. They can just kind of like take off. Now you could call that unreality, but you know, every engineer has to imagine unreality before they can make something new. I think even a scientist who proposes a hypothesis, in a sense, has left reality, at least for a little bit, in order to make changes. So the idea of, no matter how fantastic these ideas, I think that's a normal function of intelligence at least as we human beings have come to know it. On the other hand, I agree with the embodiment emphasis of Haber's. We had a friend of CTNS here for a while named Anna Fürst, and she was a German, and she worked at MIT in the the robotics lab. And she said those MIT scientists think that all the intelligence is in the brain. But it's a mistake because intelligence is distributed throughout her body. So she created a robot in which she had no central computer. She put individual computers in the extremities, in the hands and the feet. The robot would run around, and the computers would communicate with one another and created a kind of holistic interaction then between the robot and the external world. And I mean, how many times have you seen a piano player playing the piano, smoking a cigarette, and you walk up and talk to the piano player? Then you carry on this conversation, all the while the hands are still playing the music, you know, without skipping a beat. So the intelligence that you and I have experienced as human beings is distributed throughout our bodies. And the idea, the metaphor, that intelligence is like software, the body is like hardware, probably is not workable in the long run. I think I concur with Hava. That metaphor isn't going to get them where they want. Now, when it comes to the good, thank you, Brian, for bringing up the good. If you ask a transhumanist, what is the good, the summum bonum, it's intelligence. And you get justifications for this. All of evolution, says Simon Young in the Transhumanist Manifesto, all of evolution is aimed at one and only one thing, increased intelligence. And when you get to the ethics, he says, human ethics is oriented around the will to evolve. Ponder that. That's utter nonsense, because evolution, objectively speaking, is a mechanical interaction between variation and inheritance and natural selection that affects the species. A species has no will. You and I as individuals have a will, and of the various things we can will, evolution is not one of them. Because evolution is a species phenomenon, and you and I can only will what's there in our subjectivity. So I'm just finding a number of flaws at the level of assumption at work in the transhumanist vision. Do they need to have their philosophical house in order? Well, gee, we theologians and philosophers, we really demand that. Do they demand that of themselves? Maybe doesn't matter as much to them as it might matter to a critic. One of the problems, 5 minutes, okay, so two issues. One of the issues that Arv and I and Brian have been thinking about is why are religious people attracted to transhumanism? And it's got something to do with perfection, as Hava has rightly pointed out. And let me just think out loud about that a little bit. I like Catholics, Methodists, and the Eastern Orthodox, and all three of them have a vision of perfection. Call it sanctification, call it theosis, but your and my life is a journey towards becoming more holy, more godlike. And if you ask a Methodist, what does it mean to attain Christian perfection? The Methodist will recite John Wesley and say, it means that when I get up in the morning from dawn until dusk, my heart wants one and only one thing, and that is to love my neighbor. That is Christian perfection. So if I run into a Methodist, I'll say, have you attained Christian perfection yet? And if he or she is sort of up on the theology, they'll say, no, but I'm on the way. And I think that's kind of what Hava likes. She doesn't want us to get there, but going after it, that really is a morally worthwhile process. Now, unfortunately, I'm a Lutheran, and we gave up on perfection. We think a saint is a forgiven sinner. And so we don't have quite the excitement nor the anxiety that the Catholics, the Methodists, the Orthodox have on that. All right, let me conclude then by actually reading the final paragraph of my paper, because this is where I ask Hava a question of sorts. Note the title is The Misguided Vision of the Transhumanists. To say that transhumanism is misguided is to suggest that true guidance would lead us up another path. Where would that other path take us? Hava stops short of drawing us a map. What she has provided is a thorough inventory of the potholes, slope curves, and dead ends that plague the transhumanist road to species suicide. What she is less clear on is this: just where will her alternative route take us? So, thank you.
So, where we're going.
Yeah. So I like the way you begin with the personal, because I do believe that the attitude toward transhumanism, toward biotechnology in general, is ultimately a personal matter. It all kind of, in some way, I don't want to be too cheap a psychologist, but in some way it reflects our inclination, whether we are aware of it or not. And some people are really more tuned with technology and feel comfortable with technology, and other people are not. And I belong, obviously, to the second group, and you belong more to the first group because of your father, right? So in that sense, I agree that I can try to be more open toward technology. I have to admit that a lot of time I'm scared by technology. Okay? It overwhelms me. I want life to be simple. By the way, in that case, I'm very much like with Heidegger. I think that even though I'm Jewish and he was not exactly the model of being good to Jewish people, but I have to say that I understand where he comes from. This Catholic background, from this very rooted in agrarian life, makes perfect sense to me. So even though we come from different places, I do share that kind of sense that there is a problem here. And I agree with you that it's not a smart way of thinking. Obviously, I should open up more to technology, but I have to tell you, I'm bothered by the fact that technology has this inbuilt mechanism of constant change. You just got used to one program, and the next less than 2 months you're supposed to get used to another program because it's supposed to be better. Now, better according to whom? Okay, better according to whom? To the guy who designed this.
I still like Windows 7.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, one day my computer collapsed because Windows 10 basically took over the machine. I went ballistic on that. Of course, I had to get my support guy, my tech support guy, to fix it. He worked on it for an hour and a half and managed to do it. But why is it better? Why is Windows 10 better? Who said so? It's somebody else's mechanism of figuring how you need to organize data. So I don't buy that, and I want us to slow down. Here's another issue. I really believe that the technological world we live in is not in sync with our biological way of being in the world. We have to live faster. We don't live in the right pace. Many of the problems that we have today are the result of living in the wrong pace. And I can go on and on that. I think that we need to do something about it, and that's Bill McKibben's point: slow down. Remember, the subtitle of the book, Enough, Bill McKibben's book, Enough, is How to Be Human in the Technological Age. age. That's the challenge, how to be human in the technological age. And I think that the technology is kind of robbing us of our humanity. Because I have to be on this computer all the time, right? I have to respond all the time. Eventually, it's not only that this computer is something that I use, it's going to use me. It's already pretty much using me. So that's where I like to resist. Do they have a vision, and it's the vision of the better world that drives their action? I fully agree. My point is, let's look at their vision. Let's critique it. Who said that the vision is the right vision? Why not talk with them and argue with them? They don't want to put the vision on the table. I remember when Aubrey said to me, he actually said it in a public event, and he said, you want me to talk about the desirability of the technology. I don't want to talk about the desirability. I only want to talk about the feasibility. Well, I want to talk about the desirability.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't we talk about it, whether it's desirable or not? So I think they cop out, they get out of the conversation too fast, and we need to challenge them. On the other issues of the deep brain implant, there's a lot of conversation about that issue right now. People debate with Boston, and the issues are much more complicated than he talked about, let's say, 15 years ago. So as for the notion that we will have direct access to all the knowledge in the world, that's nonsense. When you have too much knowledge that you don't know what to make of it, you're not smarter. Definitely you're not wiser. You may have some access to information, but so what? The whole point of intelligence is a certain understanding the internal structure of whatever it is that you want to understand. Just having access to an encyclopedia is not knowledge. At best, it's information, but it's not even good information because it's not worked properly. As for the issue...
Yeah, I would add the word judgment. You and I as intelligent human beings make judgments, and it would be hard to equate judgment with just quantitative information.
And also the hermeneutical dimension. Much of what we do is hermeneutical. It's about interpretation. Yeah. The machine cannot interpret. So when I call an automated system and they give me A, B, or C, and D, but they don't give me many other options that don't fit A, B, or C, and D options that they give you. So where's the intelligence? I find most of those AI systems right now dumb systems. And we are supposed to idolize those systems? Why? You know, that to me is a real problem. As for cyberspace, yes, I'm very much, we're on the same page, and we talked about it in the other class. I don't think that cyberspace is the real. I really don't think that that's where it is. But a lot of people are beginning to live on that reality is in cyberspace. And how does that affect our political system? Well, I'm not very optimistic, given what happened in our country recently. So the fact that we are dealing here with all business of fake news and all the alternative reality, all that stuff is somehow connected to what's going on in communication technology. So we don't need to go there, but we definitely both share our appreciation of embodiment. And I don't fetishize the body, but at the same time, I want to recognize the importance of the body, and in some ways, even the beauty of the vulnerability of the body. So let's go back to where you ended, where you posed beautifully. You posed the question. You said that only gave us an inventory of the potholes, the slow curves, the dead ends, very nicely put. What I don't give you seems to be you're saying that I don't give you the alternative route. So to me, if you want me to be direct, to me the Jewish route is pretty much a good alternative route. It's about embodiment, it's about social, political involvement.
Right.
It's about being not in the perfect world, but in the imperfect, pre-messianic world. So in a sense, and that we talked about it on Tuesday, my position is profoundly anti-messianic. I am against the belief that anything can bring the Messiah right now, which is what they're doing. What they're claiming is that the technology is the Messiah. It's not Christ, it's going to be technology, super intelligence. So I'm saying no. I want to live in the pre-messianic world, when there is no perfection. So the answer to me is the perfection. When you are obsessed with perfection, what you get is this nightmare. If Stephen Hawking is now talking about the destruction of humanity, and he's saying it, at least let's listen to him. Let's realize that it is possible for all of us us to be gone in a in a blink of an eye if they have their way. So I'm just saying, let's recognize the beauty of the world. This is why I'm engaged in environmentalism. For me, environmentalism is just another way of protecting embodiment, protecting the natural environment, not saying, oh, we can solve it all with technology. No, we cannot solve environmental problems just with technology. We have to do other things. So, so those two aspects of my work are really connected with each other. So is it an alternative route? I think so, but it's not sexy. That's the problem. It's not sexy.
Oh, Jews are sexy.
Maybe. It's not something that you can serve easily.
Yeah.
Okay? Transhumanism sells a lot better because it's about promise. And I want to talk about the peril. And only recently did Nick Bostrom begin to talk more honestly about the peril. And if you ask me my 2 cents on that, I think it's because he has matured. He is now in his mid-40s. He's beginning to be a little bit wiser. He couldn't see 15 years ago. And by the way, 15 years is exactly the time span that they always talk about. Remember, originally, Kurzweil told us that singularity will happen in 2030. Then, yeah, that was original. Now it's 2045.
Right.
15 years. Next time, when we get to 2020, it's going to be 2060, right?
Yeah.
So I don't take them too seriously when it comes to their predictions. Very much as I don't take many messianic movements that always push the messianic date. Whatever you are, it's not there, okay, you continue. So in that sense, I really don't want to see technology as messianic, and I don't want to see technology as salvific. I just want to see it as it is. Those are tools we create, and we need to learn to use them wisely. And where is wisdom? That's what I would leave you with. Where is wisdom in transhumanism? I don't find that in it.